Okay, so good afternoon. I am Sir Fudiara Joe, and I'm coming today from Bonial, Scotland. So hello, everyone.
Wow.
Um, and welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon or Monday evening for me right now to figure out the future for smarter buildings. So great that you're with us. Our profiles are listed on mondaylive.org, just in case you're wondering who we are. And just to note, as always, views expressed here are personal, not of any company or organization. And do use the Zoom chat to make this interactive. That would be great if we do that. And also, this slide deck is available on mondaylive.org right there on the homepage. So this being October, we are talking about systems, and this week we're going to wrap up this theme. So really looking forward to that. It's been a great month so far. After our normal news and trends and chat, we'll talk about system of systems and really why BAS must adopt system of systems to be relevant. That's kind of the provocative stance that we want to put out there. But before we get to that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Sinclair to get an update from you.
Thanks,
Ken.
Anto. We finally are getting our speakers for AHR Orlando confirmed. I'm extremely pleased. This is our 26th year of partnering with AHR. And another thing I'm extremely proud of is that Automated Buildings has always been able to pull together a whole bunch of people from various camps under the AHR free education sessions, and this year is no exception. And if you just take a quick look down the left-hand column there, you'll see that we've got Tracy, Keith, a whole bunch of folks that are involved in the in our Sunday Live, Jim Lee down on the cybersecurity there. So it's a good mixing pot, and I'm really pleased because that's the vibe we're trying to project with Automated Buildings. In the middle of our slide there, we have the summary of last Monday's session, Integrating Interoperable Systems, which I think was a really good session. And I think this does a reasonably good summary of what that was all about. We also took a run at the paper, the system-centric design for digital twin interoperability, kind of interlocked that as well. We're finding that that's a good, these large papers that none of us seem to have time to read. It's a good idea to at least get the summaries started. The TL did not read, or in our case, the TL too long did not watch. It's worthwhile to get a summary of that to see if you want to spend the time or to do at least a fast forward through some of these slides or through a 57-page document or whatever it might be. So we're thinking that's of some value. We're looking to the summation of October, the theme, System of Systems. With one of our sponsors has got these 5 questions, get you on the right path for cybersecurity. They're also involved, if you go over to the other side of the page, Neves is also involved in our cybersecurity and zero trust in BAS free session in Orlando. And of course, Monday Live and C4SB have their own sessions, and maybe Anto will tell us a little bit about those. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you, Ken. You're talking about various activities around C4SB and Monday Live at AHR. That's coming along. I don't really have a slide on that for this week, but I think next week there'll be a lot of information about that. Right, Rick?
Yeah, there's been a couple of developments that'll kind of shape how we use our different times, but we'll have the summit for sure from 3 to 5 on Sunday. We'll probably do a kickoff party or tailgate party to watch the Super Bowl on Sunday, and then we'll have the booth on the floor, the trade show floor, in conjunction with Lawnmark International, OADR Association, and a few others that'll be on the trade show floor from Monday through Wednesday. And then we're looking to try and do something on Wednesday as well. But stay tuned, because there's some really exciting developments that'll help shape how all that time gets used.
Thanks for the tease.
Is there a keg and barbecue involved with that tailgate?
Depends on who's in the Super Bowl, but very likely, yes.
You're counting
Barbecue.
on being distracted, but to have to go watch your team, aren't you, Rick?
I'm not counting chickens or anything, but yeah, there's a, you know.
All right. So moving on. The link board as always, just there for you if you want any of those resources. Anything else from anyone? Want to bring up any interesting stuff? Hearing nothing, we shall proceed. System of systems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just sort of going through what we've gone through this month, just briefly, just as a summary. So when we started the month, we started really sort of comparing the difference between system and system of systems. And this table, which came out of this paper that's linked is here. So if you want it, you can just grab that. Really does a great job of comparing these two concepts of systems, which is the simpler sort of concept, and the system of systems, which is obviously the more complex concept, from a composition perspective, how things are connected, when it becomes completed, whether you can determine whether it gets completed or not, who constructed, how is it continue to be operated over its lifetime, and the capabilities. So this was really sort of a good way of thinking about it. And as you can see here, many of these, all of these dimensions have very significant differences between these two. So we started there, the fundamentals of system of systems. Then we had Doug Migliori, who helped us understand the value of system of systems, and a lot of the work that has happened in the Digital Twin Consortium and Harbor Research and other organizations really sort of was triggered by this paper by IBM that was published back in 2010, I believe, or 2012, about how the world operates. Essentially, the industries are basically systems, right? So it is really a system of systems. That's kind of their argument. But the problem is that we're not running it as a system of systems. We're running it as silos. And this is we, as in the biggest we, everybody in the world, right? So that's kind of the premise of their paper. And because of that, because we're not running it as a system of systems, it is costing us, back in 2010, $4 trillion, which is about 10% of the GDP. So right now we're wasting about $10 trillion a year right now, given our current GDP, global GDP of about $100 trillion. So it's significant. So that was an interesting conversation. And then last week we digged into the concept of interoperability within the system of systems, and we used this paper that came out of the Digital Twin Consortium a couple of years back. Again, the link is here if you want to download it. And we went through these sort of 7 key concepts that was explained in this paper. Again, if you are interested in this subject, highly recommend reading some or all of these papers that we're providing links to. So that was very interesting. We got some help from Doug as well on this, so that was really great. So today we wanted to, and we actually invited Glenn Almendinger from Harbor Research to come and join us, because he's been talking about and writing about systems actually for probably about 10 years now. Unfortunately, he's stuck on a plane somewhere, and he's not able to join us. So we have to do Glenn for him. We have to pretend we're Glenn. But what this paper does, it really sort of ties in system of systems and digital twin as a sort of very complementary concepts. And that the other concept that he talked about a lot is orchestration. And orchestration is the way to think about how to manage and organize systems of systems, especially complex ones, which can get really sort of large. So I again recommend reading that. So the question, or sort of the statement, this is really more of a statement than a question, is that the whole world is in many ways going to these sort of complex systems, and one way or another, they're adopting system of systems concepts. If you look at the IT world, that's really where things are heading there. And all of this sort of these papers and these presentations we've been talking about, and these arguments about the difference between systems and systems is really why we think that to be relevant, an industry like BAS, Building Automation System, or whatever you want to call this industry we're in, BAS, BMS, whatever, really needs to understand how it becomes part of system of systems. But it does sort of strike us that a lot of this is very abstract, a lot of this very academic, and we really wanted to end the month sort of bringing it down to practical stuff. So really, this is the question, or the thing that we'd really like to discuss today. How do we make system of systems practical and understandable for the industry that we're in? Because it has the impact that we've talked about all month, and we just need to figure out how do we make it work in the industry that we're in, and of course, how do we make all of that profitable? Because we're an industry, and industry needs to do that. So that's really the question, or the sort of a setup for this conversation. So I'm going to ask the first question as to how do we think of even something as simple as system, just system, not system of systems. Just forget system of systems for a second. Just system, right? I'm not sure we actually think about systems very much, despite the fact that BAS, the S in BAS is system, the S in BMS is system as well. In other words, we are in the systems business, but I'm not sure we actually think about it that way. So I'm going to sort of put it out there on the floor here to have a discussion about this. How do we make all of these abstract concepts more tangible? And I don't have any more slides, so I'm going to bring the slides. I'm going to stop the share.
I love Danielle's comment. We're already sold to her, so we're good to go.
Okay.
We're done.
We're done.
We're done for today. We can have a beer now.
Yep.
The thing that I keep coming back to, there's a couple things. One is, if we don't proactively do something here, eventually this is going to happen in our industry, because it's happened everywhere else in every other industry, right? That open, interoperable democratization of data and connectivity and so forth, at least to some degree. And how do we make it more consumable? I think for our market is another way of saying what you're saying. And there are lots of examples that we've pointed out over the months here that we've been talking about this on and off. But the most important thing is that there's a lot of hard work between where we are today and where we need to be. But that process is already started to the point where it won't be long before we'll have some tangible examples to be able to demonstrate people and start to show the business cases, I think. And that's likely the first step where people can sort of have that aha moment and really understand, okay, I get this. I don't need to add another protocol translator or gateway or anything in between. Everything is kind of there and open and available all through code, and it's open code that, you don't have to purchase from somebody to make that happen.
Well, that's a great point, Tracy. As a matter of fact, I mean, Danielle and I were talking about that with Neil Salt of Evolver. We're trying to put the message out, and we are going to put the message out that we're really out of excuses. Like, there's always one more sensor or device that I could add to, if I only had X. Like the example we used today was occupancy sensors. Like, how come your buildings aren't efficient, Mr. Chief Engineer? Well, if I only had occupancy sensors, then I could do it. But this is what's been keeping us from moving forward. I kind of think like we have to go with what we have and what's possible today, and not always pin it on some yonder star of new technology or new this or new that. So we're basically gonna say, like, there's no excuse. Like, we need to work with what we have right now and stop kicking the can down the line.
So Keith, I'm just curious, when you say using your occupancy sensor example and substituting something that we have, in that case, are you suggesting that if the owner had an access control system, you would use that in lieu of occupancy sensors?
No, it's even simpler than that. So for example, it's like, well, how do we know what the load is on the central plant if we don't have occupancy sensors?
Right.
Yeah, it's called delta T. The hotter the water is coming back, the more load we have out there. I don't need to count bodies. I can count BTU and heat content as a factor of the load on the central plant. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it wouldn't help. That's another input to the machine learning process. Every little bit helps. Meters is another example. Like, I've got to have meters in order to calculate precisely how to control my building. Well, metering is nice, but it's not a necessary component. And I just feel like a lot of times I get into these discussions and it's like, well, I'm going to have to wait until I retrofit all my buildings with X or Y, or I've got to upgrade all my systems to the Tritium standard before we can do something. And that's not the case. You'll never have enough, right? We're never going to be perfect. So let's just move forward with what we have now and get some tangible work done before other people, to the point Anto made earlier, before other people figure this out for us.
Yeah. So, well, Keith, in your example about submetering, there are a number of software products out there that do virtual submetering, just using the data of the runtime of the equipment coupled with the actual nameplate power consumption of the load.
Yes, that
So-
was one of the
so-
examples I literally gave today during our discussion. Another one was where I at Caltech 20 years ago. Pretty smart people at Caltech. We work with their engineers and their
Mhm.
students, and we made virtual KW meters out of their heating hot water and central plant. So
Yeah.
we turn water into a BTU, and then we turn that into a KW. So we literally had virtual KW meters where there were none physical.
Exactly.
Heating
Exactly.
from a central plant. So we have the technology and the skill to do all this stuff. Like, we just threw out a couple examples right then and there. Like, this is not impossible. We've been doing this stuff for years.
That's for some, I hate to say it because I truly appreciate what you're saying, but that's for some of the software solutions. That's for some of the use cases. And that's for some of the goals that people have for what they would like to be able to optimize in their building. And so yes, for some of the software solutions, there's no excuse for not moving forward because we have enough enough data to be able to feed the software. But for other questions that people have about their buildings, we don't. And the data that's used for one software system is actually not usable by other software systems. So if I'm trying to answer other questions about the optimization of my facility, the data that was set up for answering question A, software in question A, does not work for answering the question in software B. That's what's changing, and that's what is going to be exciting about some of the things that we're going to talk about over the next months, is that normalization and standardization of the way data is made available for software system B, C, D, E, F, so that people can answer different questions using the same data system or same data, and get the data format right for the different software systems that want to that could use that bit to make their purpose or their outcome better.
Yeah,
So
and
you'll-
I'm not sure if Jim Lee is on the phone, but on the line, but I'm remote. But yeah, I could just hear Jim Lee echoing this same sentiment, and also saying, like, obviously we have the technology to do mission critical control, because but we wouldn't put a VAV type controller on a control rod on a nuclear power plant. Like it would explode or melt down or whatever. Not explode necessarily, but obviously we have the technology and the capability. Since the 1970s, we've had SCADA industrial control systems for mission critical applications. And until what about the willingness to be able to fund that and pay for that level of precision and control in a building in order to be more efficient? So there's all these moving parts that we almost are kind of like our own worst enemy, because we're always trying to value engineer these systems. And maybe that's, and Jim would say, well, that's the owner's fault. And probably it is. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, so Keith, I agree with you, but I think that the key point that I'm reaching for here with the system of systems is all of these systems that are outside of the scope of what we've traditionally done. And I totally agree with you. There's so much that we can do with what we have. But the blockage I see is me being able to get data from other non-HVAC systems, non-control systems, non-industrial systems. And it's the proprietary nature, not actually in our own industry, but in these other tangential or orthogonal industries to ours. So an example would be a maintenance management system, or I'm not saying that there isn't any data that we can get out of a number of these proprietary business systems, but I think that that's where I see the value of system of systems. So I'm going to agree with Keith directly, but also say that there's a higher level calling where we're blocked, not because we don't have the domain expertise, but because a lot of these business systems are proprietary.
But the same goes the other way around, right? Those business systems find data or information in HVAC or many other sort of real-time systems totally inaccessible. Just can't get it in at all. So it's the same way, both ways, and therefore.
I would make the argument, Anto, that they don't have the domain expertise to understand what to do with the information or how to get it. But it's, as Keith said, there's if you're not holding things to too close a tolerance, there's a lot of data you can get out of systems, and there has been for a long time, and a lot you can do with it. But it's the purely proprietary business systems where there aren't industry standard data definitions for 30 years like Lawnmark or BACnet. Much more difficult for us to work with.
Yeah, and I find it in my experience, this be probably because I was too ignorant to even understand how easy it was. I integrated into Neiman Marcus's bank system. Like, we had cash register rings coming in real time, and we were controlling their HVAC. This is 2003 that we did this. And we had no problem So people used to say point of sale is another one. Ticket sales for movie theaters, AMC and Cinemark did that a long time ago. So people, but I was so, I just went for it, and then everybody uses that example, particularly in our industry. Like, ooh, it's got the point of sale system on the same network. It's like I integrated into point of sale systems 20 years ago. So it wasn't a big, it's a lack of expertise and competence in trying to understand how easy it is to do this sort of stuff if you have the will to do it.
And standards.
Which, yeah,
So-
did you know there's actually an OPC standard for point of sale system?
It's funny.
Didn't. Interesting.
This all comes back to a little bit of chicken and egg, I think, where, we're not making our data available if those other people aren't making their data available necessarily either. So it has to start somewhere. And I think what we've been arguing here is if we get it out there and take the first step and can get people to start to adopt that use and behavior, I suspect the market, the users will take over at some point and improve on what got started, and we'll see that go out other places too, right? I mean, we're already seeing the specs now asking for it, right? We've seen our first set of RFPs that are looking for that kind of openness and interoperability. So that's usually where it starts.
But Tracy, is open interoperability different from system of systems?
I think it's a foundational piece of system of systems.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
So
And
it's a little apples and oranges, maybe. It's a predecessor to
right.
system of systems.
But I look at it, we still, in my opinion, still have a long way to go to come up with the value for a system integrator / contractor. Why? To an end user owner. Why? To the mechanical engineering consultants. Why should you put this in the specs? And what value does it mean, or deliver, I should say, deliver for the various constituents that are part of our industry? So for example, I actually brought up this conversation with a new client of ours, and a couple questions that they asked. First and foremost, this all makes sense. You agree we got the technology? Absolutely. Second question was, what are the costs involved? And is there a cost value if I do this? A cost value. They realize this will cost more, most likely, but what is that cost value to me as an end user? This happened to be an end user. And for example, we already talked about enhanced capabilities, resource optimization, getting data, improved decision-making, resiliency, cross-domain innovation, strategic advantage, the way I'm operating my buildings, etc. But what does this actually solve for each of these target groups?
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's my chicken and egg comment too.
But Tracy, you were just saying just now that we are starting to see, and we know this is true, not that all of this information is public, we're starting to see customers, building owners are actually asking for this type of use of their data and information.
Yeah.
So
With a very, very direct calculation of the benefit.
So why do you have to sell a
Well,
concept
I think to
when
Mark's
people are
point,
already
though,
asking?
this is a very limited example right now compared to the wide open market, right? We are way early on the early adopters at this point. It's coming, but to Mark's point, I think it's not there yet. And that's the chicken and egg.
And also, so is system of systems only feasible for a multi-site, multi-building type use case?
No.
Or is it,
I don't-
all right, hold on. Or is it is a single building, you know, I don't know, some square footage or whatever, is it applicable for that type of use case? We all will say yes, for sure. That's our DNA. We're all gonna say yes.
Except I would also say that this isn't going to be for everybody.
Correct.
There will
I would
be
agree.
use cases and situations where it doesn't make economic
Well, no.
sense to do that.
And let me, one last thing, let me play a devil's advocate here. Can you have a system, a true system of system without a digital twin?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I don't equate SOS with digital twin.
Just
necessarily.
asking, okay, just,
Yeah.
some
No, I-
people
I
out,
wanna-
out here do already. I'm just
Well-
asking, you know.
Can we go back to the assertion that people have not been asking for this? It has been asked for decades. It's been asked for. IBM wrote that paper 10 years ago. How many years ago? They articulated the
14 years ago.
inefficiency.
you know,
Then you.
Owners have been asking for system of systems approach, and we have not delivered.
and
But we
other,
can blame it on the customer, or we can take a little bit of accountability of the chicken and egg might actually rest at our feet.
it's us. It is, Rick, you're exactly right. It's us. That's what OPC-UA was all about. Unified architecture. One of the greatest Trojan horse protocol moves was made by CPC Emerson. Okay, this is their dirty little secret. It was brilliant. So everybody was talking, what is in every retail store? A cash register. So what Emerson did was, and this is brilliant, I found this out 20 years ago. Emerson came out, they utilized the OPC UA POS protocol standard, and they built the cash register protocol into their refrigeration controller. Brilliant. They're not going to get any pushback from the retailer's IT department because it's like, you're already running my protocol. I'm literally running your point of sale protocol. And if we can just separate ourselves from, well, it's not quite in the right context or syntax, or, it's not long work compliant or whatever, name haystack brick. It doesn't have to be. These guys, they read, and that's why Emerson was the de facto standard for refrigeration systems, because they rolled right in on top of the cash register protocol. Brilliant Trojan horse move.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
Keith, I think one of the issues here is whether it's BACnet or OPC or MQTT. I don't care about the protocol in the sense of the problem we're trying to solve with system of systems. It's about how does it's coming up with a methodology, because this is what we've been talking about, is coming up with a methodology that is independent of the protocol and allows the data to be represented in a common method, again, independent of the type of system, and allows a system like a building automation system that runs on BACnet to easily access that refrigeration system from CPC over OPC without having to know a damn thing about OPC. To me, that's where we're trying to get. So that, because otherwise, fine, you personally know how to deal with OPC. How about the 2,000 contractors out there who can't spell it?
Or tell you what it stands for.
Or tell you what it stands for. Exactly.
I think of this a little like the people who sat down one day and said, I'm going to make this tool that allows me to get onto my computer and just search for anything. Right? I don't know where it's stored. I don't know what format it's stored in. I don't know any of that. I just want to know everything I can about subject X. We had no idea where that would take us back in the day when that was first. Yeah, I think that was conceived for research and scientists and so forth. And now I can't imagine not being able to Google every little thing. I can't get through a TV show without Googling how old is that actor, or what movie did they star in, or you know, or a sports game without looking up a statistic or something. And that's the level that we kind of need to strive,
get to.
I
Right,
think.
exactly, Tracy. That's what
I mean, if
agree
I,
completely.
you guys know I do a lot in restaurants and stuff. And one of the things that, you know, we can do for sites that we have is tell you, you know, what are my top 10 restaurants from an energy per square foot standpoint, or what are my worst 10, and then try to figure that out. What if I could do that across all restaurants, you know, even the ones that I'm not in, and we had all of that data available to us?
You know, I feel a LinkedIn post coming on. What if what if the building controls industry had invented HTTP and HTML?
It wouldn't have.
It would have never propagated. Yeah, coming this week.
World's best kept secret, right?
Okay, comment I wanted to make is back to something Rick had said a while back in this, the system of systems. I think we're late to the game. We're actually having this discussion. We probably should have had it years ago. But in addition to that, there are some brilliant examples out there. And I think, although we don't know how to do some of this stuff, when we see something incredibly intriguing or incredibly productive, that people are using system of systems outside of our industry, we need to delve into that and learn, how did they do that? And there's just some great examples there. And some of the resources that Rick has connected us to, you know, the Linux Foundation and some of that is just incredibly intriguing. And the power of players that are playing in that game. I think another thing that's happening is Jim always brings up that we're kind of a small industry and we can never get critical mass, but these companies have created critical mass and they are in their system of systems, and we just need to understand better how they did that. So I think that's our homework for the industry.
I agree. I wanted to add, I'm gonna have to jump off a little early, so I'm trying to get all my thoughts out early. I apologize for monopolizing, but listening to what you were saying, Ken, also reminded me that the way this will likely unfold, or could or should unfold, it's not a silver bullet solution where all of a sudden one day we have interoperability and openness across all buildings. It's not going to work that way. It's going to be a little like what we've seen in other markets where there are little teeny examples of things that happen all the time or get added every day. Never ceases to amaze me what new alarm or alert that my phone gives me about, you know, a plane ticket or your reservation, or it's time to check in, and it's not from my airline, it's from Microsoft, right? There are lots of little examples of where systems have been created in such a way that the data is available for somebody to create an application for, a use for, and put it out there, right? And there's going to be all these little incremental improvements in how buildings become smarter and how we use that data over time, until at one point we're going to wake up just like this. I can't go anywhere without this. You know, I can't have my business in this industry if I'm not dealing with smart buildings, right? I need that open interoperable. I need that data. There will be people who will figure out how to put this stuff to use, no doubt in my mind. And we don't know all the value propositions yet, I guarantee it. We do not know what we don't know, and that is coming.
And
That's the same. You were talking about search and Google, but that's to me that's the same with the internet itself.
Yeah.
Right. Would we have created the internet if the rationale was I needed to be able to switch on a light bulb from the other end of the world? No.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know, there are people on here old enough to remember before we could do all that. Did we know we needed to do that? Did we know we needed something this powerful in our hands? I remember I've said this on this Monday Live before, when my wife first asked for a cell phone. I thought that was the stupidest idea ever. I'm like, there's phones at home, there's phones at the office, there's phones at the kids' school. Why do we need to have a phone with us all the time? And now I can't go in the other room without my phone.
Yeah.
So
Kind of wish you'd won that argument, actually. So much easier.
Yeah. And Tracy, here's the point. It's not a phone. It's a video camera to record your kid's first step.
yeah.
It's a communication device. It's a research instrument. It's almost everything but a phone.
But
Yeah.
Keith, but that was the brilliance of it, right? By tying it to the phone. I mean, let's go the other way. Let's imagine that he created a solution that was a PDA, or what did we call them back in those, personal digital assistant? That was all things except the phone, and now you're like carrying two things. Yeah, it's a business tool. That would have become a business tool. It would have been like a BlackBerry, which, you know, kind of weirdly enough, coupling it
It's
to
a
the
great
phone.
example of silos, though. Why didn't those silos continue? Because it made so much sense for those to be interoperable, right? So that's where we are. We're in the PDA and phone phase of buildings.
If phasers are ever invented, I'm sure it's going to be a plug-in on my iPhone that I'm going to be able to zap people from a distance.
No, Keith, I'm inventing a teleporting device for your
There you
phone to teleport me. So I don't have to take an airline plane. I can teleport from
There
you
one
go.
location to the next.
It's going to be the Zoom disruptor, right? You
Exactly.
think Zoom was disruptive? Just wait until Mark comes out.
Yeah.
Teleporter.
Yeah,
Be
okay,
careful,
Mark,
they're
but
listening
if
to
you're
us.
going to do that teleporter, at least teleport. I'm okay at being not physical. I just teleport a 3D image of me. But while you're doing that, can you reduce 20 years off my life and take like 50 pounds off me in the
I was gonna
process?
say I'll do the 20 pounds for you, but the age on life, nah. And that'll be extra. You gotta pay for it, you know?
There you go.
You
value
want
add.
check, and it'll be as a service. We're done. I'm finished. See you on the beach, boys and girls.
That's the freemium versus the premium model.
That's right. Yeah, Ken made a great point though. Ken, and I'm sure you were there. So I mean, and I was there as well. So you remember Honeywell DeltaNet? It just drives me nuts when I see these architectural diagrams in buildings, like we could tie the lighting system to the access control, to the fire system, to the HVAC. Man, we had that since the 70s. We had that. Like I used to work on these systems, so it drives me nuts.
So
Back
the
to
question-
The first Delta I worked on was justified as a security system, and we piggybacked BAS on it. I was working with Hartman, and we basically wrote a weather predictor in zeros and ones.
But Keith, just
the
back to your
question
point
is-
though.
Oh, sorry, Ann, you know. I
Sorry.
was just gonna say, the question is, why didn't it take off? If we've been able to do this for 30
Thank you.
years, why didn't it take off?
Well, I was going to quote it back to the phone discussion, right? Because everyone said, you know, at the time, nobody was going to give up their BlackBerry. To your point, when the iPhone and the marketplace came out, it was like all the BlackBerry people were like, "It's already done. I've been doing it for the last 5 years. It already exists."
You know
have-
why it didn't take off and why the Apple took off? Because they both were vertically integrated. That's why. It wasn't open. So it got lambasted and ostracized because it wasn't open. DeltaNet was a proprietary architecture that enabled vertical integration of silos. That's why.
I think, well, we could debate this all day long, but Apple not only created the value that resonated with both business and consumer, it took the BlackBerry from just a dull, dry thing to an experience. Apple created an experience, plain and simple, and that's why it took off.
Yeah, and to Danielle's post, she just did a message. Yes, that's the whole point. Apple is proprietary, but that doesn't stop you from enjoying the benefits of an Apple iPhone.
Just to put a little more history to it, at Apple, I was there. when it was announced, not going after business customers at all. And if you remember back in your business, you were not allowed to use your Apple iPhone in your business. You still had to carry your BlackBerry separate. So Apple did not go after business or enterprise users, which is kind of a weird thing to think back at. What we're trying to do now with introducing System of Systems is we're conscious of the needs of the corporate IT department. And guess what they love? They love Linux. They love open and interoperable. They love layered systems. They love standards. So as opposed to what we were doing at Apple when we introduced iPhone, by the way, it was a music player. That's what the original intent was. That also happened to send texts and work as a phone. It was an MP3 player. That's how it was positioned internally. Anyway, what we're trying to do now in the System of Systems in our domain is we're very conscious of it's an enterprise play. It's an IT play. So being compatible and being conscious of what the IT department is thinking of the System of Systems is a big part of what we're going to be introducing over the next few months.
But what
Being an
might
IT
push
play
it
is
more
the
than
key to it,
anything
right?
is our mobile strategies. Because we touch people and people come to the building for security and all kinds of reasons, everything is falling onto the mobile device. And the mobile device can only be incredibly effective when it is on an effective system of systems. We're not an effective system of systems. We got to grow up. We got to change.
So one thing, Rick, I found interesting towards the beginning of the hour, you were talking about software and from system software A and B and C. You were sort of laying all of that out, making a point. Did you mean to talk about software? Because we're talking about systems.
Thanks for the softball. Yes, absolutely. And following the language that we're more adopting of the Linux Foundation, the Linux Foundation has stopped talking about systems and they use the word software. Software Defined Industries is the title of that 57-page paper that Ken occasionally references. And what helped me, I think, was to stop and think about what is a system and what the hell are we talking about when we're talking about systems in our industry. And you can divide systems you can cut up systems, but the critical part is the software part, not the data part. The software that runs, whether it's running a VAV or it's doing analytics or whatever it is, the software is the critical part that needs to evolve or be adapted. The data can more easily be adapted than what the software is. So using the Linux Foundation as the model for how to kind of change the conversation and get more practical about, okay, what do we do in our industry, whether we're in airlines or banking or finance or whatever. Think about it as software, and that'll help potentially understand, okay, so now what do we do differently? So that's why I use the word software.
And
Yeah.
Going back to the question I posed on my last slide, to making it practical and understandable, wouldn't talking about software be more practical and understandable than systems? Because systems is a very abstract term. We all know systems, and yet we don't know systems. Whereas software is very specific, even if we're not software developers. Would that help?
Yeah, I think it would, Anto, because I think from the Linux perspective, which obviously relates to a much larger universe than our building controls universe. Software, i.e. applications, is where it's all about, right? And really what we're trying to do with the IBB is find a practical destination for these applications to live, and a method by which these applications can easily talk to one another without having to bring an IT specialist into the picture to make it work. That's why I was referring earlier. That's why I said earlier, I want to get past the damn protocols. I want to get back, I want to get up the stack to applications where the applications live and where the software can just inherently be designed to, you know, cooperate, if you will, or coexist in a well-defined, easy to implement by anybody method for these applications to share information.
And we're teaching everybody to write software these days.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right, because everybody coming up through the educational system thinks in application terms. They're thinking how can I either write code or adapt code or intermix code, if you will. You know, that's the world they're thinking in, right? They're not thinking that's it.
No code.
That's the story. Or no code.
No
right?
code. Yeah, they're not thinking.
No code at all, right?
I think Carrie's just came back from a course on no code. Yeah.
So where do we go from here? Should we develop this sort of systems thing, sort of the software analogy more or use it more?
Or is it really a case of creating the market pool, Anto, right? And having people, we're not going to solve it. I mean, individually we might, but as a team here, we're not going to solve it, right? So is it really an exercise of education and creating the market pool?
Right. Which is much easier. It's much easier to show people.
Right. If you create the vacuum, it will get filled, right?
I still think the examples that exist, the amazing things we can do with our phones is our selling point. And basically we just have to be able, the clients will ask us, can you do this? I can do this on my phone. I can open this door. I can open my door at home. I can do this, all the things they can do. And that's what actually drove the old DDC industry too, is when we put computers back in those days, we didn't put mobile devices in their hands. We actually put personal computers.
Yeah.
And once the management got personal computers, in fact, in our early systems, we would always include a personal computer because that's the way we backed up the system. That's the way we programmed the system. And inevitably, on all the big projects, there was 1 or 2 extra personal computers that were bought that just seemed to slip away into populating the people that were associated with the system. And I think that basically enabling the people surrounding the system with these devices. So that's like an old history kind of thing. But now everyone already has the iPhone. They're used to booking their airplane tickets, figuring out where they are in the world, all of that stuff. All I want to do is everything I do on my cell phone, I want to be able to do in my building. Come on, you guys. I can't do that. I can't get Google Maps of my building. Why not?
So that actually brings up a good point, Ken, about everyone who's been successful creating a new market vacuum didn't do it with the incumbents, right? You found a new receptor, somebody who was receptive to, so the PC was a classic example. Corporate companies didn't accept PCs until people were using PCs at home and brought PCs to work because that was the way to do it, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to sell to the incumbents who've got vested interests in the space that it is now. You know, Jim will get the BACnet creation all over again. We'll get 12 years of people going, yes, I want to be on the committee to help. And we know what that means.
Right.
So I think what would be interesting, Anto, is to first see if we can identify who would be most receptive to this type of message, who's not the folks that we typically deal with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what is the answer to that?
Yeah,
Is
I think
challenge,
that's the challenge, right? What is the
so
worth a workshop or a session?
it occurred to me that we don't normally ask the following question. Somebody buys a system. I don't care what it is. Where is your app? Just ask that simple question. Where is your app? Right? We don't think that way. I mean, if I'm an IoT provider, I would say my app's in the cloud in all likelihood, right? But if I'm I'm providing an access control system, I might, oh yeah, well, we got an app that runs on a server in the security center. So there might be that answer. Okay? But in some cases, we need the app perhaps to live on an embedded device. But by simply asking the question, where is your app? Because we're so accustomed now to asking for the app that is associated with some product or service or software package. I want to download your app, right? Okay, fine. I get that on my phone. Where does that phone app go? It goes to a cloud server somewhere, right? So that's where the app lives. And now my phone can talk to that server, but what else can talk to it? Because that's the problem we're trying to solve here, is we're trying to say, okay, fine, if the security app lives in the cloud over here and the building automation lives in this other cloud over there and so on, I want all of those to be able to independently communicate with each other should they need to. Right?
So is the question, I think that's a great part. You're saying, where is the app?
Yeah.
And is there not the second part of that question? Where is the app and what does it produce in terms of data and what can it consume in terms of data?
Exactly. That forces the conversation, doesn't it, Anto?
But a lot
Yes, it
of
does.
consumer devices, you cannot start without signing on to the app. You
Right.
buy this brand new device, you don't have any option. Basically it comes with it. It gives you a URL. You sign on to the URL, you sign on, you identify yourself, and you push the button and it connects the app to the product.
Right.
Why don't we do that? Why isn't
Why
it
don't we do
that
that?
simple?
That's what I'm arguing for, Ken.
And Steve's question is the most easiest one. Where's your app? And let's start there, right? It's even easier than if you have the app, we could probably talk about the data, but show me the app. And if you
That's
can't
it.
show me the app,
Show me your app. Yeah, love it.
show me the app.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I'm just sort of thinking through how most vendors would respond to that. So I have a vendor on the screen here, Mark. Where is your app?
My app's on the device or it's in the cloud. You take your choice. You can access it where, when, and however the hell you want to.
And see, that's a brilliant answer, right? It's right there.
Great answer. But then the second part of the question we're evolving, what can your app provide me? And what can I provide it?
It can provide you with all the data that you want. It can be stored at the device level. It can be stored in the cloud. It's whatever you want. What do you want to know? What's my energy consumption for
I have
the day?
I have a business system that requires some data from you. How do I do that?
Let's make a connection into that business system. We're actually doing it for 2 financial clients as we speak, coming from controllers, if I dumb it down.
But I think if you go back to Steve's fundamental question, I know we're way over time, but you go back to Steve's fundamental question, I know Mark is in a good position to answer that question. There's probably 10 others that can't even ask the first part of the question.
Right. But it's an interesting exercise.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're past time. So thank you. I think this is a good conclusion to the System of Systems month, and we'll start a new month next week on a topic, on a theme that we haven't quite decided yet. So we shall see you back next week. And thanks all for the discussion. Thanks everybody for joining us, and have a great week, everyone.
Okay.
Daniel wants to put in a vote, by the way, before we go.
Send your subject, send your recommendation in, Danielle.
Yes.
Yeah, send it into any of us and it'll get considered.
See ya.
Okay. See you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.